Hey! Hello, sacred friend. I am Lori Andros, and welcome to this episode of the Meet Me in Sacred Space podcast. Today, we are going to talk about ceremony, and more ceremony. I just really love this topic. I love exploring sacred practice in this way, sacred connection. Now, when I talk about ceremony, I want to just really be very clear right away, because very often ceremony, ritual, and sacred practice will actually all be used interchangeably for a lot of different people. But for me, they each fall into very different categories, and they all have a very different, they all mean something very different to me. So when I talk about ceremony, I am talking about the big event, not the little things that we do, from one moment to the next. It's like the big event, the moment that we set aside and we go all into an experience. And there's a co-creative magic experience that unfolds between myself and spirit, or anyone else who's creating the ceremony or a part of the experience and spirit. It opens space for this really direct connection with the divine. Okay, so I really started my ceremonial practice and learning about ceremony back in 2007. This was when I stepped onto the shamanic path, when I started studying shamanism and really immersed myself deeply in the study and the practice. I went to my first class, I came home, and I was so moved by my experiences with ceremony that I knew I wanted to bring it into my daily life. So that is exactly what I did. I started out right away on the very first full moon after getting back. I stepped into ceremony. I was clumsy, I was awkward, I did not know what I was doing, but I muddled through. And on every new moon, every full moon after that, I worked through and really anchored in that practice and brought it in a regular way where I was showing up over and over and over again, creating space for myself to connect with the sacred in a meaningful way, and creating space to connect with spirit in a meaningful and defined way, and creating space to really honor the depth of the journey that I was embarking upon. Yeah. I was on a deep healing journey at that time. And there were a lot of things surfacing, things that I didn't know how to navigate or move through in ways that I felt comfortable with or understood. But ceremony allowed me to sink into the emotions, the depth, the stories, the challenges that I was struggling with. It gave me a space to process them and step out of the ways that my mind maybe was wrapped around the story and making it even bigger. To actually dissolve those threads of looping and really open up space for a bigger sense of vision, an ability to see it clearly and outside of my own wounded story, my own wounded version. This was really significant for me. And it really supported me in moving through a lot of the deep inner healing that I needed to do for myself so that I could open up my own ability to connect with spirit directly, to receive wisdom and insights from within and from spirit directly, and so that I could more powerfully navigate my day-to-day life. Well, let's fast forward from 2007 to 2020. So taking things to ceremony had become a pretty regular part of my life. And in 2020, we all know what happened in 2020. Everything in life, I kind of just turned upside down in different ways. And for me, I found a lot of things within my personal journey, my childhood, had really come up for another layer of healing. And I had been working through them in many different ways, from, oh goodness, so many different layers. And I had arrived at a point where I realized that chapter, that cycle was ready to be really honored and complete, and that I was also ready to open the doors to something next. But I didn't know what that next was. Chris and I were camping at a campground up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. We're at this little county park on the shores of Lake Superior, and we were just having a magical time. I mean, everything about that trip was really beautiful, and we kept finding ourselves in conversations with individuals who had done something that we thought was really fascinating and cool and interesting. And as they were sharing their stories, they introduced the conversation or their story with this phrase: I began a new chapter. And it just jumped out to us every time we heard that phrase: I began a new chapter. We came back and we were like, wow, this is just really fascinating that phrase is here so frequently. We sat with that, we listened, we paid attention, and then we began to ask, is it time for us to begin a new chapter? And what new chapter are we beginning? Well, Chris and I have been talking about moving to the country, living, outside of the city for years. We have worked with several different realtors, but we've never found the place. And it's also never really been the right time. Well, that question came up again. And then we realized, then in came an awareness that perhaps we weren't asking the right question. Perhaps we weren't looking in the right place. We weren't looking for what is actually the best fit for us. And our initial thought was, let's just move out into the country, just outside of our local area. But we began to ask, what if we purchased remote land that we could camp on in the summer? And that opened up a whole different conversation. So we pulled up a map and we said, what are some of our favorite places in Upper Michigan? What are some of our favorite places to go? And we just kind of listed a couple off, and we kind of, let our minds wander a little bit. Ideas came forward. And then immediately came in a list of all the reasons why it just wouldn't work. And number one on that list was, how on earth are we going to afford that? Have you ever asked that question? Yeah. This was the question we were asking. And with it sank all of our energy. So all of the enthusiasm and the momentum that we had going towards this new idea, this kind of evolution of something that had really been tender and warm in our hearts for a long time, it was like all of our energy sank. And as it sank, I could feel us just kind of going down that dark hole of all the things and all the reasons why not to. You know that dark hole, don't you? Yeah. We all, when we're on the threshold of something that's important and significant and meaningful in our lives, very often as we stand at that threshold, all of those things pop up and that drain of energy just begins to come forward. Those are all the things that we've told ourselves for forever, and it's why we haven't already done what's in our heart. And the opportunity is to be present with them, to honor them, to let them go. And in that moment, I had an awareness that, oh my goodness, what are we doing? We're letting ourselves go through this drain. And I had a message come through, and the message was, take this to ceremony. take it to ceremony. And so Chris and I came home, and I said to him in the car, I just looked at him and I said, we need to take this to ceremony. And he's like, okay, all right. And I'm like, but you need to do this with me. And he's like, okay, all right. Exactly what we did. We sat down together in the backyard. Actually, we sat down with our dog in the backyard. We had little Acer at the time, and pulled everything out, and we made a beautiful prayer bundle. And in the process, we talked about all of the things in our life that we were so grateful for. And we celebrated the land that we had been living upon, the home that we have, the relationships that we have here. And we just brought it all into celebration and deep gratitude. And then we got really clear and invited forward the idea that it is time for a new chapter. We're ready. Show us what this is. And we opened up the space for that. Well, within a week, we found a place that just kind of met all of everything on our list. We went to visit the property. We put in an offer, and within a month, we closed. It happened so fast. Things showed up in ways that really surprised us. Yeah, really, really big ways. Now, the thing that's been really interesting, because now it's 2022, we've spent a couple summers up on the land, we've had time to really enjoy and experience it, and we've stepped more wholly into what this new chapter is, right? Or this new book, actually. It feels like a whole new book. We are discovering some really interesting things. One, in that experience, the money showed up like that, in a pathway that we had never even knew was available. The next thing is that deep, deep generational healing has unfolded within my lineage. Really deep, profound, meaningful ways. Things that I would never have anticipated possible. I actually really kind of wrote them off as not possible. And Chris and I have come together in our new chapter together, co-creating in new ways. We've found the ways that we love to bring things to life, work with the land, and work with being there on the land. And we've found parts of ourselves, things that we love, able to be expressed naturally and more wholly than we ever anticipated. It has been so much fun and such a gift and blessing. And along the way, a lot of other magic has unfolded. So let's talk about why ceremony is so important and why it's so important right now. I think that one of the really big things is that we are at a time where it is important for us to really open space for direct connection with spirit. Yeah, to open up the pathway for our own direct revelation, to source our own insight and guidance and knowing. And then nurture and cultivate the trust to act upon those nudges that we receive, the insights that we get, to take action in ways that really moves us forward, that is in full alignment with who we are. Growing up Catholic, I was taught that we receive connection with spirit through church, through our religious leaders, and that they're the ones who have the answers. What I've come to know as I've stepped into ceremony in deep, deep ways, as I've nurtured and developed my own relationship with spirit, We are all able to have that direct connection. We are all able to access and source our own wisdom and knowing and truth. And it's essential that we do. Yeah. It's essential that we come back into ourselves. And develop and nurture those gifts within ourselves. Ceremony creates this incredible container of space for doing that. The next part of being able to source that direct connection with spirit is really being empowered in our unique gifts and medicine and how we can share that with others in our lives. How we can show up more wholly within ourselves. It takes time to nurture that. It really does. But it is so worth it. It is worth the journey. Part of being able to nurture and develop those gifts is really giving ourselves permission to do the healing that we need to do. Earlier, when I talked about my beginnings of working with ceremony, that was one of my primary pathways for inner exploration, healing, change, transformation. It was the pathway that supported me in really going within and opening up space in a safe way, in a way where I could gently pull back some of the layers of trauma that I had experienced earlier in my life. Trauma that I, quite honestly, at that time, was not really fully aware or understood or even accepting that I had experienced. Doing it in that way opened up the space for me to be at my own pace. And to really be in deep connection so that the energy felt safe and grounded and fully honoring. Actually, it felt empowering. I think this is something that many of us can recognize a desire for at this time, or a need for in our lives. It is time for us to really, truly do the healing that our soul needs so that we can step into our medicine, to step into our gifts and show up fully for life, feeling fully alive, feeling in joy, feeling at ease. I also spoke about how I showed up for ceremony on every full moon and every new moon. And in every season and during every weather condition. Yes, I have done ceremony below zero in crazy gusts of wind, in snowstorms, rainstorms, in the middle of thunder and lightning. I have pretty much experienced it. And along the way, I've come to recognize my relationship with the moon cycles and with with the natural rhythms and cycles of life. And I think this is something that's really important for us right now as well. I think our creative energy has become so separated from the natural creative energy of life. And I think reconnecting with that is going to support us as we move forward, creating what wants to emerge on this planet at this time. It's what takes us out of the place of being just a part of, just rolling along with what's going on, and actively stepping in and knowing our own capacity to really bring change to the world. I think ceremony also helps us to just step back and allow things to unfold in a natural rhythm and cycle in its own timing. To rest into or release our desires or wants to control things and force things to happen in a certain time or in a certain way. What I've found is that when we do that, when we are able to really truly step back and allow things to flow in their own way, they surprise us with surprise and delight in ways that we couldn't have seen or anticipated if we had really continued to push the energy in a particular direction. Yeah, ceremony. It's pretty amazing. That ability to connect directly with spirit, the ways that it will support us in healing, change, transformation, attune us to the natural rhythms and cycles of life, create healing not for only ourselves but for the earth, the ways that it brings in insight and awareness, the ways that it brings deeper meaning to our day-to-day lives. Ceremony to me is like the central element. And it really opens up that space for what I think a lot of us are looking for in life, the piece that is missing or absent in the world. I think we're desperately seeking sacred connection. And ceremony to me is the pathway to that, the pathway to experience it wholly and fully. So, with that, my friends, I would like to invite you to join me for my upcoming program, or class actually. It's called Take It to Ceremony. It's part 1 of the Foundations of Ceremony. This is a 5-part series, and throughout all 5 parts, we will move through the compass of creation, working with each of the elements, working with each of the seasons. But this initial class, part 1, the Foundations of Ceremony, this is where all of the core of what ceremony is, how to really create it, is going to be shared. How to create it in a meaningful, aligned, soulful, connected way. I think this information is actually missing in so many different contexts, and it is what creates a solid foundation so that as you move forward in your sacred practices, you have something that helps you to just really land and feel connected, feel anchored in your sacred work. So often when pieces are missed or not fully brought together or integrated, it creates an energy of fragmentation. And the work that we're doing to bring change, to manifest, to connect with vision and land that vision in our lives, things don't come together if we are missing that really stable foundation. So this is where we're going to kick off with the Foundations of Ceremony. I'd love for you to join me. The class begins on November 1st. It is a 5-week class, and each week we'll go deeper and deeper into practice. You can learn more about it over on my website. I'll put a link in the show notes, but it is loriandress.com/take-it-to-ceremony. And you can find everything there. All right, I would love for you to join me. Let's dive in. Let's step into ceremony and become really active participants in our sacred experience, in our lives, in sacred work. I wish you a beautiful day. And as always, shine brightly. Bye for now.